Ask Waves, take one.
How you doing, everybody? This is Lou Diaz, and I'm here to answer questions from the Waves audio community. This is Ask Waves. Question 1, shoot. Well, I guess weird, but crazy request was Khaled. We were working on a song called Shining, which was Beyoncé and Jay-Z. And at the time, Khaled was very popular, but hadn't sort of crossed to that level yet. And he was waiting for Beyoncé to do a record with him. And so she finally agreed. So it was great news or whatever. And I normally go to bed at like 4 a.m. every night. But this night, of course, I went to bed like 11:30 or something. So I'm crashed out. And my wife gets up to go to the bathroom and sees my phone face down, flashing. So she picks it up and it's like 17 missed calls from Khaled. So she wakes me up and goes, "Hey, honey, I think you need to talk to Khaled." So I call him and he's like freaking out. The queen got on my record. So I'm like, "What are you talking about, bro? It's like 3 a.m. And he's like, "She's on the record, but Jay-Z wants to drop the record tomorrow." Now, the next day was the Grammys. And Jay-Z's idea was he's dropping the record after the Grammys. So Khaled's like, "We got to mix it." I'm like, "Wait a second. I was going to call the studio, get everything set up and get everything ready." He's like, "No, the vocals are coming to you in like 2 hours and we're mixing." So I'm like, "What studio?" And I had a okay room in my house, but it wasn't something I was mixing out of, at all. And so he's like, "We got to figure it out." And sure enough, man, 7:30, I got the vocals. By noon, I drank about 21 cups of coffee. I mixed the record. By 4, it was off to mastering. By 7:30, Beyonce and Jay-Z approved it. I crashed, and I woke up the next morning, and it was number 1 on iTunes. So the longest I ever spent on an album was really Pit, and the reason why PitBull, because he was our artist. You know what I mean? I never really had something that took forever, although I worked with a couple artists that we were in the studio for a long time, one being Lauryn Hill, and I worked with her for like 6 weeks. That was just a project that was kind of evolving. And with Pit, it was just our album. So we took our time, and we worked for probably about 12 to 14 months, and we did about 150 songs. But that made up the first album in Miami, which went gold, and like they say, the rest is history. So it was worth it. But it was out of the fact that it was our artist and we were going to put our best foot forward with his first album. Some of the challenges we had was he was an unknown, which is everybody who starts out. He was an unknown. During that time in Miami wasn't really known for its music scene. I mean, we had some artists that had broken out, Trick, Trina, Julio Iglesias, Miami Sound Machine, but there wasn't that scene yet. And the big challenge was just getting people to believe, Pitt was an anomaly at the time. Thankfully, Miami got behind us, and I had a lot of relationships in the business and radio that I was able to cash in on. And Pitt's just work ethic and just sheer tenacity, man. We built over the year, 2001 to 2004 till the album came out. Debuted at number 14 and ultimately sold 750,000 copies. And, now he's Mr. Worldwide. The best memories I got were just like us dreaming, you know what I mean? Like I remember sitting here, Pitt was on a futon. What happened is we moved into a house. We ended up renting a home in Davie, Florida, and we called it the DMTV house. We all kind of moved in there. And the master bedroom upstairs was the control room. The master closet was the vocal booth. And we had Wyclef in there. We had Lauryn Hill in there. We had big names combined and work with us there. But man, it was the memory of just that, of dreaming and talking big like it was going to happen. And then in retrospect, sitting back, I remember sitting with Pitt 5-6 years ago, and we were in the studio, and he said, "Man, I remember sitting in that futon talking about doing a record with Usher, doing a record with all these people, and everything we said, came to pass, which is it's pretty gratifying, you know what I mean? Now it's great. It's amazing. And me and him, he's like a family member to me, and we have a great relationship, but those memories are probably he said it himself, it's probably the best times of our lives. So when I'm stuck in a mix, my go-to is to stop. Just stop. I used to try to power through it, or I used to try to like take a small break and stay in the room, but just stopping and getting your focus off of the song or the mix or whatever, I don't know, it goes a long way, man. It goes a long way. Because a lot of times when you're at that point, it's partially because your ears are fatigued. And I take off, I leave my studio and I'm fortunate enough to have a studio in my house, so I'm able to go upstairs, relax, take a breather, get a cup of coffee. And then when I come back in the studio, I'll usually throw on some music that inspired me before. That kind of resets my emotional level. You know what I mean? So you feel like, all right, I'm wanting to do this again. That's half the battle with this. A lot of times it's, do I have the ability to mix? Yes. But when you don't feel right, I don't know, man. You just need to get in that state in order to really do good work. So I make it a priority to, it sounds counterintuitive to take a break when you're like in a rush, but it's worth that 15 minutes to make it, for the mix to come out better. Pressure. That's how you reset anything. Yeah, it's funny. Me and my brother used to like joke about that when we were working on Pitt's project. It was the pressure. A lot of times it'd be like, man, we got writer's block, or I can't come up with a good beat, or whatever. And then some big opportunity would come up, and it was like, it's time to show and prove. And that pressure, believe it or not, to me, is a motivational tool that can get you to do what you didn't think you could do. You know what I mean? I've been asked this question a bunch of times. Absolutely, there was a song. There was a group called the Baha Men, and they were a client of mine. And, the Great Inner Circle kind of put me as an engineer because they were friends of theirs. So I recorded several albums with them, like for a few years, like in the end of the 90s. And then in the year 2000, they kind of regrouped, right? They changed the band because they were like a house band at Club Atlantis in the Bahamas. And every year they'd come to Miami and record their albums. So they would record them with me, and then I would mix it for them. And it was a great client of mine. I loved the guys. They had a great relationship. But by the time 2000 came around, my stock had gone up in Miami. And I was working with a lot of, bigger artists and working with major label work. And when they came for that third album, I wasn't really available. It wasn't that I didn't want to do the project. I love those guys, but I was, I had a project booked at the time. They come into town, and they had reworked the band, and they had put 3 young guys in the front now, and cool. Well, I wasn't able to do the session, but they hired an engineer from New Jersey, and he got snowed in the first 3 days. So Lourdes, which is the manager at Circle House, says to me, hey, Luke, can you just cover the first 3 days and I'll move your schedule around? I said, sure, no problem. And I did. I'm glad to do it. So we went in the studio and worked on a song. And I remember Steve was running the label at the time, and it was a cover song. And it was funny because they played it to us in the lounge, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And anyway, I heard it, and I'm like, all right, I guess this is what we're going to work on, whatever, those 3 days. And long story short, we were auditioning all the guys barking, and that song was Who Let the Dogs Out. And we worked on it those 3 days, mixed it. I thought, what the hell is this? I just didn't get it. You know what I mean? And I remember I left. At the time, we were printing CDs after a mix. And I remember my kids, I would come home and go, Daddy, we love this song. I want the dogs. I'm like, what are you talking about? I had forgotten about it. And, it did what it did. And we all won our first Grammy with that. And just goes to show you, man, like, you do not know what you're working on. Just do good work and everything will fall together. What's not out there? I mean, everything's out there. Like any trick and, of the trade is out there. But one that I haven't seen, which a buddy of mine pointed out, is the bypass. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes less is more. And sometimes you have so much stuff plugged in and you're working so hard on something. Sometimes that bypass button is the best trick you can apply to a mix. And believe it or not, it actually makes things sound better. There's several places that I remember being inflection points that made me change the way I saw things. And the most recent one, which was working on Painting Pictures, Kodak Black's first album. And Kodak, he's super, hyperly talented artist, but he didn't know the business. He didn't know how anything worked. He just loved the music and, poured his heart on it into the music. And so his idea of recording a song was recording the song, dropping the headphones, and upload it to Spotify and YouTube or whatever. And his team was like, Kodak, we got to mix, we got to master, we got to do all this. So it was, from him, I started seeing what artists saw in their rough mixes and their just rough ideas, that there's a lot there that us as mix engineers and mastering engineers maybe are not connected to and should be connected to, because the end user, which is their fans, are also connected to that. And we're sort of the bridge to there. And we got to be real careful how we handle that to get to the listener or to the fan, that it still has that essence that Kodak believed in. And it taught me a big lesson. Like I remember changing the way I thought about working with artists from that point on. I definitely like think more about their sound, their demos, their ideas, and you know what I mean? And not just be like, I know better. You know what I mean? Well, this is a pretty huge happy accident. It really wasn't an accident per se. We were working on a song and T-Pain was on the hook. We get the files from T-Pain. He records his vocals to a 2-track. Then I, as a mix engineer, had to put it all together. As I'm doing that, nobody's in the studio yet. Nasty hasn't been there. Khaled hasn't been there yet. And I get it. And there was a hook where the song just was playing and everything was normal. And there was one hook where there was a huge drop. And just to spoiler alert, this is All I Do Is Win. So that drop in that section, I should say the mistake I could have made was say, never showed them that break, But anyway, later in the day, Khaled comes in and Nasty comes in. And then that section where he says, and the hands go up, that long break, and they stay there. Everybody was like, that's a long drop. Like, is that too long? And I guess since I was sitting with the record the whole day, that day, I was like, no, it's not too long. That sounds amazing to me because I was used to it. But they had just first heard it. It kind of threw them. Think about it. That's just an arrangement drop. But without that drop, that song is not the song we all love today. And I think after 4 or 5 hours that we were all sitting there together, everybody came around and kind of caught up to where I was. And everybody saw it. They saw the audience with their hands up. And now, I'm out and I hear that song and I see people reacting to it. And it's like wild to see how a little drop can make such a big difference on a record. But it wasn't a mistake, but it was I'm happy that I included it in there. So a good vocal mix versus a great vocal mix, it's really, to me, about no distractions, right? It's not so much technically as a good. It's just that when I'm listening to it, am I going, what was that? There's no distractions. Your job here is to fix whatever's wrong, enhance it and lift it up as much as you can, but be transparent. You know what I mean? And when you do that right, then the listener or the fan is just immersed in the song and not thinking, what was that? Or, well, why is that so bright? Or why is that so low? Or, you know what I mean? And so I think that's what it is. I think when I hear a good vocal mix, it's because I don't hear it. I don't think about it. And when I get to the end of the record, I'm like, yo, who mixed that? You know what I mean? That's to me the ultimate goal I think all of us strive for. I don't think I've had really hard conversations, you know what I mean? I think probably Kodak, because since he wasn't really up to speed on how the whole, the mixing and mastering process worked, I was brought in to the project, Ben Deal, my brother, Ben Billions and Derek, because they kind of like, we have a clique called The Team. And at the time, Kodak was recording in our studio. So when Kodak finished his record, he didn't know that we had to mix a song, that we had to master a song. So then when I came in, I had to kind of have a sit down with him and just explain to him not so much the importance about why we did it. And he was super cool with it. Like he sat down, heard me out, because I didn't want him to feel like I'm muscling in, I'm coming in to mix the record. This is what we do. And so he was like, all right, cool. I'm just really concerned because I love the way the demo sound. So that, again, back to the other question, but to stay on topic, we had a good 20, 30-minute conversation, and I felt it was kind of educational, and I was trying to just kind of give him my perspective, and there was a level of trust with me because I was part of the crew that he's comfortable with, and that's probably the hardest conversation I ever had, only because he didn't know. But I don't think I've ever had any disagreements or something that we butt heads so bad that we had to have some, tough conversations. Wow, that is difficult. You said six plugins? I mean, listen, reverbs aside, delays aside, right? I think just for the core, I would definitely go with the CLA Mix Hub, only because I love the other SSL plugins on Waves as well. But that one, I like the way it sounds. And it gives me a compressor, it gives me an EQ. It feels like I'm on a console again because I can throw across the whole board. So that would get me there pretty quickly. And then I'm a huge saturator fan, so BB tubes definitely would be there, so I could get lift on the low end and maybe on the buses. And then ultimately for the master bus, I would probably use Abbey Road's TG mastering chain. I love the spreader on there. I love the way the EQ sounds. It's a great last touch. If I'm being completely honest, I need a de-esser, I need some verbs, I need, a limiter. But, those would get me there, at least get me to mastering where they can get me all the way there. So I wish I could tell you something technical, but for me, it's more about your mindset, right? This is a very up and down business. And, work on your craft, learn, give yourself patience and time for your ear to grow. And then don't let the disappointments be too low and don't let the highs be too high. I've seen a lot of people derail themselves in success and in failure. And to me, what I found gives you a longevity and consistency in your career is that, celebrate your wins and, take a lick when when you take an L, but then move on, man. Don't invest yourself emotion into it. And that'll help you years of psyching yourself out, keeping your mindset, where it's supposed to be. All right, everybody, that was awesome. I really appreciate you guys submitting all those questions and I really enjoyed answering them all. I'll catch you guys on the next video.